Hello there. My name is Jasom Jensai. Welcome to Star Wars Duels. This episode will be Count Dooku versus Maul. This is specifically each combatant from just before their final duel, and was suggested by Black Meliodas. He makes videos comparing the power levels of the anime characters. There is a link to his channel in the description. If you've never seen an episode of Star Wars Duels before, this is how it's going to work. First, I'll analyze their physical prowess. Then I'll go over their force mastery, before finally discussing their tactical aptitude and fighting style. I'll end with the potential scenario for how the duel between the two of them would play out. The battlefield for that duel will be Bespin. Dooku replaced Maul as Sidious's apprentice. Maul killed Dooku's former Padawan, Qui-Gon Jinn. If the two met, the battle would be heated, but who would win? Count Dooku was brought into the Jedi Order at a young age. When the time came for him to find a master, he was selected by Master Yoda himself because of Dooku's great potential. Eventually, he would take on his own apprentices, first Rael Averross, then Qui-Gon Jinn. However, Count Dooku would later leave the Jedi Order and be taken as Darth Sidious's apprentice despite his age. Count Dooku was over 80 years old at the end of the Clone Wars, 20 years more than even Palpatine. Dooku's use of Force augmentation is not quite as potent as Master Yoda's, but he was still able to keep up with the Jedi far younger than him. Much of Dooku's speed comes from his positioning. This awareness of the battlefield and ability to control it allowed Dooku to fend off multiple attackers with ease. After Dooku betrayed her, Ventress sought the help of her people, the Night Sisters. The Night Sisters' plot culminated in a duel, Ventress and Oppress versus Count Dooku. Ventress was a quick and ferocious fighter. Oppress was a strong and brutish warrior. Dooku played them off one another flawlessly. He beat Ventress back with kicks and used Savage's clumsy charges to break contact with Ventress when needed. Although Dooku avoided most of Savage's strikes, one of Savage's two strikes that landed disarmed Dooku. Despite being unarmed, Dooku was able to avoid Ventress's strikes and continued to use Savage to get space between him and Ventress. After retrieving his lightsaber, the battle reached an impasse. Ventress continually attacked Dooku but couldn't break his guard. Meanwhile, every time Oppress tried to attack, Dooku unleashed a torrent of Force lightning. Because he had never been taught how to counter Force lightning, Savage was unable to attack. After several tense seconds, Savage broke free of his bonds with the Night Sisters. He attacked both Dooku and Ventress with a Force choke. After this, Dooku fled. Ventress followed, but Savage was too slow. Ventress challenged Dooku alone, but the fight went as you would expect. Dooku immediately put her on retreat, and eventually disarmed her with the Force. Dooku demonstrates his speed and his skill in this fight, but he also shows a lack of strength. He was able to dodge all but two of Savage's strikes, but both attacks that landed sent him flying, and the first one disarmed him. However, after he was disarmed, Dooku was able to avoid the attacks from Ventress with no weapon, demonstrating incredible speed. And in addition to his skill, Dooku demonstrated his incredible ability to control the fight through careful positioning. Dooku was fighting two people at once, but instead of being a pure liability, he managed to use them against each other. Though this is a great example, we see these traits more in his duels with Anakin and Obi-Wan, or at least the ones where they take them together.
Now! No, Anakin, no! No!
In their duel on Obadiah, Dooku rarely directly engaged both Jedi at once. He started with a slow but steady retreat, using the narrow hallway to keep them at bay. After retreating into an open balcony, he adapted. Just before they closed in, he would lunge forward, pushing the second one back before drawing back himself to deal with the first. Over and over, he would use this to separate them. He also incorporated physical strikes and minor acrobatics to control where he and his opponents are on the battlefield. Oh, and also this headlock thing. While this style of fighting is very effective against multiple opponents, it forces you to constantly move and leaves you with no time to recover your energy. It's incredibly fatiguing. Dooku's economic style helps with that a little, but what worked even better was Dooku just retreating. In his next and final duel with both Anakin and Obi-Wan, Dooku didn't perform quite as well. Though he was able to keep at least one away for the large portion of the fight, he was not able to control the fight and could only defend himself. Through the help of a couple super battle droids and a small influence from Palpatine halfway through the fight, he was able to defend himself for 35 seconds before taking Obi-Wan out of the fight. After this, all he had left to deal with was Skywalker, but Anakin had come a long way since their first duel on Geonosis. In their first encounter, Dooku made quick and easy work of young Skywalker. Despite the obvious potential of Skywalker, Dooku's experience clearly outmatched the Jedi. This fight is hard to judge as the choreography is difficult to follow and appears to be forced. For one thing, there's this whole section where the camera's too close to see what's going on. Then there is the ending. Their next fight occurred on Tatooine. Though Dooku was merely toying with Skywalker in this fight, Anakin demonstrates a key aspect of his fighting, his overwhelming strength. Skywalker had grown more skilled since their last encounter, but Dooku was still superior. Their next duel came much later on the planet of Naboo. The difference in skill between Skywalker's first two fights and this one is clear. Dooku managed to defeat Skywalker, though he relied on his Magna Guards and the Force to do it. Early on in the fight, Skywalker forced Dooku into a blade lock, a position that favored Skywalker due to his style and physicality. Dooku was able to use the Force to escape, but Skywalker's abilities caught him off guard. Though at this point I don't think Skywalker was a better swordsman, I think he was getting close. A short time later, they had yet another duel on Naboo. That time, Skywalker did overpower Dooku. Skywalker was strong, and he used that strength to control the fight. Dooku was forced to focus on deflection to avoid taking the full force of the strike. Because of this, Skywalker was able to keep Dooku on the defensive and eventually knock him down with a kick. Despite Dooku's efforts, Skywalker slowly pressed Dooku's lightsaber further. Suddenly, he grabbed Dooku's throat. He continued to press his lightsaber down as he squeezed the life out of Dooku. Dooku was able to defeat Skywalker, but he was unable to do it with his lightsaber alone. At this point, Skywalker had surpassed Dooku in physical combat. The rivalry ends at the end of the Clone Wars, fitting because it began with the start of the Clone Wars. The beginning of this duel has already been discussed, but once Obi-Wan was taken out, the fight did not improve much for Dooku. Skywalker immediately knocked Dooku over the edge of the balcony with a solid kick. Dooku managed to land on his feet, but Skywalker quickly forced him back on the defensive, before locking him in the bind. Dooku broke the blade lock and began fending Anakin off. Skywalker's heavy strikes pushed Dooku back, but Dooku managed to block each one. Anakin began pushing through Dooku's guard, forcing Dooku to deflect Skywalker's attacks with wide sweeps instead of taking them head-on. Suddenly, Skywalker saw an opening. Dooku's blade was too far forward. Whether it was a moment of fatigue or a moment of fear, it didn't matter. Skywalker grabbed Dooku's extended wrists, he slipped his own blade above Dooku's, and in the blink of an eye, he slashed off both Dooku's wrists. It was over. Dooku had fallen. Dooku is spry and his positioning is unrivaled, but Skywalker was too strong and too fast. The heavy strikes Skywalker was able to unleash slowed Dooku down. Dooku had no room to counter, and he was eventually worn down to the point where Anakin was able to finish him off. Though this would be a great place to end, I have one more fight to discuss. I consider Master Yoda to be the greatest duelist of all time. Though that title is certainly debatable, Yoda is for sure a challenger for that spot. Count Dooku himself is another great duelist, though he lacks the physicality to back up his skill. After a brief duel with the Force, Dooku and Yoda ignited lightsabers and attacked. Yoda's swift and chaotic style was overwhelming for Dooku, but despite that, he managed to fend Yoda off. Dooku used wide defensive strikes to keep Yoda at bay as he continually danced away from Yoda. After 35 seconds of this, Dooku managed to crush the bottom of a pillar with the Force and escape. There are a few caveats to this fight though. Dooku is Yoda's former apprentice, giving him and Yoda a defensive advantage against each other. This allows them both to stay in the fight a little bit longer, but it's still an incredible feat that puts Dooku among the top duelists of his era. Maul was trained from a young age to be a Sith Lord, but before he completed his training, he was lost and his master replaced him. During the Naboo crisis, he fought Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi. The outcome of that duel would change his fate forever. The battle began with the Jedi surrounding Maul. Maul used his double-bladed lightsaber to keep track of both sides. After separating the Jedi with a kick, he used the same technique as Dooku. He would fight defensively but launch a flurry of attacks against one Jedi just before the other Jedi came back into range. He incorporated kicks and even punches into his saber strikes as well. The difference is that Maul relied on his speed, while Dooku used positioning and precision. The Jedi eventually pinned Maul down, but he managed to knock Kenobi over the edge of the platform. This left him open to a strike from Qui-Gon. Despite falling dozens of meters and landing on his back, Maul was up and fighting in seconds. With the Jedi split up for a bit longer, Maul let Qui-Gon take the offensive and led the Jedi to a series of laser gates. After a brief pause to catch his breath, the gates opened. Kenobi was locked behind the last laser gate, allowing Maul to take on Qui-Gon one-on-one. After an initial series of attacks from Qui-Gon, Maul took the offensive and eventually overwhelmed him. Following another break, the laser gates opened. Again, Maul weathered a series of attacks from his opponent, but when he tried to take the offensive, Kenobi closed in and managed to slice Maul's lightsaber and knock him to the ground. Maul quickly flipped to his feet and spun away. With only one blade, Maul matched Kenobi's skills and launched him into the pit with a force push. Though it is definitely debatable, I think Maul would have eventually won without needing to resort to the Force. At this point, Maul had all but won. However, because of his arrogance, Kenobi not only escaped, but also cut Maul's legs off and knocked him into the pit. We'll talk much more about Maul's arrogance in the tactics and style section, but for now it's worth noting that Maul was able to keep up with two opponents very effectively. Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon generally have excellent teamwork, yet Maul was able to constantly separate them. On top of that, this fight shows that Maul is a quick and powerful fighter. But this is not where Maul's story ends. Eventually, Savage Opress, Maul's brother, finds Maul in a cave on a forgotten planet. The Zabrak, once destined for greatness, is physically and mentally broken. The only thing holding him together is his hatred for the man who took everything from him. Kenobi. Savage brings Maul to Mother Talzin, who heals Maul's mind and constructs powerful prosthetic legs for him. This was not the beginning. There are neither beginnings nor endings, but it was a beginning. The beginning of Maul's hunt for revenge. His hunt for Kenobi. He first lures him to Raydonia. Kenobi is ambushed by Savage and defeated by the Night Brothers, but he receives an unexpected help from Asajj Ventress. Kenobi takes on Maul while Ventress takes on Savage. Kenobi and Maul trade blows. They both overextend and are punished for it several times, but neither is slowed. Then Kenobi leaps to the high ground. Maul doesn't fall for the bait and jumps onto a spot adjacent to Kenobi. Maul taunts Kenobi about his master. Unbalanced by his rage, Kenobi overextends and Maul easily takes advantage of this. Just when Maul thinks he has Kenobi beat, he manages to retreat into the cockpit of the ship and escape, leaving Maul and his brother to drift in space. Maul and Savage then begin a long-term plan through the Weequay Pirates of Florin, but the Jedi heard of it, and Kenobi along with Adi Gallia arrived to stop them. Savage took on Gallia, while Maul hunted down Kenobi. Maul and Kenobi traded blows. They were more balanced than in their last duel. Kenobi fell back in his defense, but Adi Gallia was defeated, and after a while, Kenobi had to retreat as well. He is tracked down by the brothers. Maul and Savage surround him, but Kenobi incredibly manages to defend himself. He darted back and forth with the speed and agility of a Form 4 user, while always maintaining the defense of a Form 3 user. Throughout the battle, he repeatedly kicked Savage in the knee. Kenobi was always on the brink of death, but somehow managed to hang on. Eventually, Maul gives up and lifts Kenobi with the Force and slams him against the wall. He and Savage get him in a blade lock, but he finally manages to injure Savage's knee with a desperate kick. The large Night Brother collapses in pain, and Kenobi is able to escape. In these two fights, Maul demonstrates his speed and strength. Though Kenobi is able to survive both encounters, Maul was able to keep him on the defensive and even get past his guard in their first duel. However, Kenobi is a defensive fighter, so keeping him on the defensive is not as impressive as keeping someone like Anakin on the defensive. Maul took a break from his duels with Kenobi and formed an alliance with Death Watch. As part of his long-term plan to gain power and revenge on Kenobi, he and the Mandalorians attacked the Hutts. When dozens of bounty hunters emerged, Maul, Savage, and Vizsla retreated, but soon their Mandalorian reinforcements arrived and they easily captured the Hutt fortress. Though Maul should not escape during the battle, Maul had a rather unimpressive showing trying to kill Sugi as she rolls around on the floor. Then Embos Anuva leaped onto Maul. Maul held it back and shot mere inches from his face. When he finally threw the Anuva off, he got in a brief hand-to-hand fight with Sugi. The bounty hunters finally escaped, when their comrades threw down a bunch of smoke bombs. Maul could have chased them down, and he probably could have killed a few of them, but he decided not to chase them. When his grand plan finally came to fruition and Mandalore was under the rule of Death Watch, he challenged Free Vizsla to a one-on-one duel. The battle began with Vizsla closing in and using his shorter blade to keep Maul in the defensive, but it didn't last long. As soon as Maul took the offensive, Vizsla used his jetpack to get some space and began firing his blaster pistols. They returned to lightsaber combat, and Vizsla caught Maul in the face with the backhand. Before Vizsla could follow up, Maul headbutted the Mandalorian in the face. Vizsla used his flamethrower and grenades and even a pair of sharp projectiles to batter down Maul, but Maul did not slow. Vizsla again attacked with his lightsaber. This time, Maul seemed to take the advantage, though Vizsla proved his speed and skill. When Vizsla again retreated with his jetpack, Maul launched him backward with a kick. Both warriors fell to the ground. Vizsla's jetpack broke, but Maul only grimaced. Vizsla slashed his blade along the ground and launched shards of glass at him. As Maul covered his face, Vizsla shot a grapple line, which tangled around Maul's feet. Maul quickly cut the line, but Vizsla pulled out a blaster and shot Maul's lightsaber out of his hand. Vizsla ran forward. Darksaber ignited, but Maul caught his arm, endured a couple of punches, and broke Vizsla's arm. After brutally beating Vizsla to the ground, Maul claimed the Darksaber and decapitated Vizsla with it. This fight is one of the most brutal fights in Star Wars. Both combatants are constantly beaten, burned, and broken by each other, but Maul came out on top. While this is not Maul's most impressive fight by far, it demonstrates his toughness. It is also worth noting that Maul didn't use a single visible force power during this fight. Just as Maul hoped, Kenobi came to rescue Satine, but he was captured and forced to watch as Maul executed her. Maul had gotten some measure of revenge, but before he killed Kenobi, his former master intervened. Sidious confronted Maul, though he could have used the Force at any time to end the fight. Sidious instead utilized his lightsabers to take on the Night Brothers. Maul took the lead in the fight. Though Maul was agile, his master easily danced around the Night Brothers. They pursued him through a hole, but Sidious eventually knocked his Savage back with a kick. Sidious feigned fatigue for a second. Maul took the bait and attacked, but Sidious launched him back with a powerful force push. Maul awoke from unconsciousness just in time to see Sidious stab Savage through the stomach with a cruel grin on his face. That was another beginning. That was when Maul realized that it was not only Kenobi who had taken a life from him. Kenobi had taken Maul's life as a Sith, but Sidious had taken his life as a Night Brother, and now he had taken the life of Savage. Despite his fear of Sidious, Maul ignited his sabers and attacked. He pushed Sidious back with a series of powerful strikes. Sidious took the offensive, but Maul landed a kick, knocking the Dark Lord back again. They dashed forward and met in the blade lock. Sidious overpowered his former apprentice and threw him against the wall with the Force before torturing him with Sith lightning. Sidious had plans for Maul though. He planned to use him to lure out Mother Talzin so that he could finally kill her, but to do that, he had to let Maul escape. This storyline is discussed in the Son of Dathomir comics. After this, Maul returns to Mandalore where he is tracked down by Mandalorians and the Republic. In the midst of a civil war between the Mandalorians, with the Republic aiding the side against Maul, he asks Ahsoka Tano to join him to defeat Sidious. When she refuses, they have a duel. By this time, he has acquired a dual-bladed lightsaber. He used both sides effectively, driving Ahsoka back with his speed. Each strike led smoothly into another. He disarmed her, but she managed to defend herself for a bit and called her lightsaber back with the Force. After another series of exchanges, Maul gets in a blade lock with Ahsoka. He starts overpowering her, but she leans backward, and as Maul falls down for no reason, she kicks him in the stomach and he is flung several meters out a window. Maul retreated because he had no reason to continue fighting. But Ahsoka chased him down on a support structure of steel girders at the top of the city. They both fought with incredible speed and balance. Eventually, Maul managed to disarm Ahsoka. With her at his mercy, Maul could kill her easily, but instead he offers her another chance to join him. She refuses again, and he tries to kill her, but naturally, since she is unarmed and Maul is equipped with nothing more than a lightsaber, Ahsoka defeats him. Throughout this fight, Maul is distracted. He knows Palpatine is about to spring his trap on the Jedi, and he wants to convince Ahsoka to join him. However, this is still one of Maul's least impressive showings. Years later, Maul was stranded on the planet Malachor. There he met Ahsoka again, but this time they worked together, along with Ezra Bridger and Kanan Jarrus, Jedi Knight. Their opponents were 3 Inquisitors. At one point, Kanan and Ahsoka were battling 2 of those Inquisitors. Then, Maul joined the fight. Immediately, the Inquisitors were overrun. Though the Inquisitors aren't the most powerful Force users, the way Maul deals with them with such speed and ferocity shows that he has developed since his time on Mandalore. Maul's final duel was a duel with Kenobi, on Tatooine. After a long search, Maul finally tracked Kenobi down and challenged him to a battle. The two circle each other as Maul throws out taunts. Finally, Maul discovers Kenobi's purpose, and Kenobi ignites his lightsaber. The two face off. Their stances shift. The rivals prepare to duel. The fight is over in 3 strikes. A high strike, as Maul always does, a low strike to follow up, and the same hilt strike that Maul used to finish off Qui-Gon. Despite its length, the fight has a lot going on. You've probably seen breakdowns of this fight before though, and if you haven't, they are pretty easy to find. Much of that is specific to the situation though, so I won't discuss it much here. In conclusion, of all of Maul's fights, Maul is a relentless warrior. He is fast and strong. His attacks flow smoothly between each other, and he's an expert at attacking from different angles. He is extremely tough. We see his skill from his first duel with Kenobi, to his confrontation with Sidious, and finally his last battle on Tatooine. Dooku is a quick duelist, but Maul is a bit faster. Maul is decent form, but Dooku's precision is unrivaled. Dooku's attacks are never slow, but Maul is able to flow more smoothly. Maul has endured far more pain than Dooku could ever dream of. Dooku's skill gives him great leverage, but Maul's saber staff combined with his greater brute strength gives him an edge. Dooku fended off Yoda for a time, but Maul was able to keep pace with Sidious. Dooku fought off Anakin and Obi-Wan, but even when alone with the Skywalker, he struggled. Maul could never defeat Kenobi, but he is always a difficult challenge. Though he could keep up for a while and would certainly be a formidable challenge, I favor Maul in a physical contest. Count Dooku is an excellent Force user. He is strong enough to lift 10 obelisks and 8 smaller obelisks at once. He lifted them smoothly into the air, held them at the same height, and spun them all at the same speed. After holding them for a few seconds, he let them fall back down. Dooku was able to lift all that weight with a controlled expression. Based on how smoothly the obelisks were lifted and how calm Dooku seemed, he could probably have lifted even more. Dooku has also used the Force to crush the bottom of a large but pointless pillar on Geonosis. Not only would this take strength, but it shows that he can wield his strength when under pressure. When he crushed the pillar base, he was locked in a duel with Master Yoda. He didn't have time to lose. Despite the pressure, he was able to crush the pillar base. Dooku isn't just strong, he has incredible skill as well. In the Age of Republic comic focusing on Count Dooku, the Count lifts up 17 blasters and points them at his opponent. Though he never fires them, I doubt he was making an empty threat. Dooku is strong and skilled, but when it comes to Force powers, speed is his specialty. Dooku uses the Force more often than any other duelist I know. This is a tactical strength, but it also demonstrates his speed. He is capable of going from lightsaber strikes to blast of Force lightning in the blink of an eye. In his duel with Ventress and Savage, he was able to fend off Ventress with his lightsaber, while fending off Savage with his Force Lightning. At the end of that duel, he knocked Ventress back to Force Push, followed up with 2 quick slashes with his lightsaber and another Force Push. Ventress slammed to the wall, and he immediately disarmed her with the Force. Before she could react, he electrocuted her with Force Lightning. He demonstrated his speed again in his last duel with Anakin on Naboo. He kept Anakin at bay with lightning-fast Force pushes, 2 chairs thrown at the Jedi along with dishes and silverware. When Anakin finally got close, Dooku used a chair as a shield. Dooku's ability to rapid-fire Force attacks is a huge advantage. However, he can also use 2 powers out at the same time. In his duel with Ventress and Savage, and in his duel with Anakin, he uses both Force Lightning and a Force Push at the same time, to devastating effect. In his first duel with Anakin on Naboo, he uses Force Lightning and a Force Choke at the same time. Dooku is a very well-rounded and dangerous Force user. Maul is not known for his Force powers, but he is still incredibly powerful. His most notable feat is tearing apart the hyperdrive of a Vanity-class starcruiser. He tore the entire thing apart, which is just incredible, though it is worth noting that it was not mid-battle. When in battle, Maul is nowhere near as powerful. This doesn't mean he's weak, however. When he and Savage were fleeing from Hondo and Kenobi, Maul pulled an entire ship down from the edge of a cliff. Usually Maul uses the Force out of instinct. When he does that, it's usually not as powerful. For example, during his duel with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, he uses the Force twice. Both were incredibly quick, but neither were very powerful. Like Dooku, Maul uses the Force with speed. It is hard to say who is faster, but Dooku definitely has more precision. Maul is quick and powerful, but though his instincts are good, he lacks control. I think Dooku is stronger as well, though Maul destroying the Venator's hyperdrive is incredibly impressive. Dooku has shown just as much strength while maintaining control though. When he destroyed the hyperdrive, Maul pushed himself to his limits. He embraced his rage and let it focus his power. Dooku, on the other hand, did not let his expression nor his posture change when he lifted the obelisks. In addition to his outward calm, he was able to hold the obelisks at a steady height and spin them at a consistent speed. The level of control he shows here implies that he had not reached his limit. Dooku is the superior Force duelist for his precision and his power. Dooku has excellent positioning and precision. He is a master of Form 2 of lightsaber combat. Dooku keeps his opponent just out of range. When he's attacking, he'll step forward to strike and angle his lightsaber to stab into his opponent's guard. If his opponent is faster than him, he will widen his slashes to cover more area. This is easiest to see in his duel against Yoda. Instead of his usual lunges and ripostes, he uses wide slashing movements, flowing from one attack to another. This can also be seen in his duel with Ventress. Though it is brief, he again relies on wider slashes to keep his opponent boxed in. When his opponent is stronger than him, he is forced to tighten his guard and deflect more than block. Instead of pointing almost straight out, his blade will point further up or down. This is seen in just about all his duels with Anakin. Regardless of his opponent, Dooku's defense is excellent. He leans out of the way of attacks, allowing him to counterattack. When pressed, he will steadily retreat, lunging every few seconds to keep his opponent on their toes. Dooku's stance allows him to attack or defend almost anything in the blink of an eye. He's always looking for an advantage, but his attacks don't stop with his lightsaber. He utilizes kicks in his combat frequently. But more notable than that, Dooku also attacks his opponents with the Force. With no warning, Dooku is able to knock his opponents back with a Force push. He can shock his opponents with Force Lightning, and so much more. Dooku is quick to use the Force and quick to follow up with his Force powers. Dooku's positioning and his mindset allow him to always be ready to strike. Maul is a master of Form 4. He is quick and agile. He attacks from many different angles, using both blades of his lightsaber, kicks, and punches. Maul also seems to use Form 1. He has wide, flowing swings, which can especially be seen when he wields a single blade. Together, these two forms make him very fluid. He flows from one attack to another. He strikes from all angles with wide, simple slashes. Maul doesn't use the Force in combat as much as Dooku, but he still uses it frequently. His Force attacks are usually simple and utilitarian. Force throwing an object to open a door, Force pushing his opponent into a pit, Force pushing his opponent into his brother's fist, Force pushing his opponent into a wall, or Force pushing his opponent through a wall. Maul uses the Force instinctively, but not excessively. However, Maul has a major flaw in his tactics. That flaw is arrogance. The best example, of course, is in his first duel with Kenobi. After killing Qui-Gon and knocking Kenobi into the pit, he thought the battle was won. Kenobi leaped out of the pit and force-pulled his fallen master's lightsaber. Maul was caught unprepared, and Kenobi was able to cut him down. Worse than making the mistake, Maul never learned from it. Throughout all the rest of his duels, Maul acts with arrogance. Sometimes he is more arrogant, sometimes less. Sometimes his arrogance is justified, sometimes it's not. Maul's arrogance remains even in his final battle. Kenobi baited Maul with his master's favorite stance, and Maul responded with 2 quick slashes and the same move Maul used to finish off Qui-Gon. Maul's arrogance, his belief that he could succeed so easily, was his undoing. Count Dooku's expert positioning, his ability to take advantage of any weakness in the blink of an eye, would be extremely dangerous for Maul. One hint of arrogance, one overextension, and Dooku would strike. If Maul overswings, he could be knocked aside with a well-placed kick or a powerful force push. A slight hesitation, and Dooku could lunge through Maul's guard with the saber. Dooku has a distinct advantage over Maul's arrogance. Dooku's style has its drawbacks as well though. Warriors with a lot of speed or power can wear down Dooku's guard and overwhelm him. This can be seen with Anakin Skywalker, Quinlan Vos, and Yoda. Each of these warriors is very energetic and aggressive, just like Maul. Maul could push Dooku onto the back foot and slowly batter through his defenses, eventually knocking him down for the count. The terrain for the duel will be the landing platform on Bespin. The platform is a smooth, flat surface just wide enough for the Millennium Falcon. It has a wide walkway leading to it and a lack of guardrails to save people from falling for their deaths in the clouds. Though the platform is wide by normal standards, a duel between two warriors as powerful as Dooku and Maul would make it feel very small. The confining space and dangerous edges would emphasize the tactical advantages of each opponent. Maul's arrogance would become even easier to exploit. All Dooku needs to do is knock Maul over the edge and he wins. On the other hand, Maul's aggressiveness would allow him to continue to push Dooku back. With a small area, Dooku has nowhere to run, and Maul's advantage is emphasized as well. Tactically, I think Dooku has the advantage. Though Maul might be able to overwhelm Dooku with his reckless style, I think Dooku would be able to defend himself long enough to take advantage of Maul's arrogance. Dooku gets the slight tactical edge. Before I explain who I think would win, tell me who you think would win and why they would win in the comments. If you liked the analysis, why not leave a like? I promise you it won't cost you a dime, but it will certainly help me to make more videos for your enjoyment. This is where the fun begins. Count Dooku leaped out of the hovering ship, landing smoothly on the platform. He heard the ship zoom away, leaving him to face his opponent. Darth Maul, or should I say, Maul. You have plagued the galaxy for long enough, Dooku said. Maul stood in the doorway, leading the platform. He wore simple dark clothing, a long lightsaber hilt with a strange hook on the end hung from his waist. Grim determination mingled with fear and excitement flowed from Maul through the Force. He was so easy to read. So your master has let you loose on me, Maul said as he ignited his dual-bladed saber with a twirl. Finally. Dooku let a small smile touch his lips as he ignited his own lightsaber. You mistake me. This is not my master's command. This is personal. I will have my revenge. You know nothing of revenge. I see I will have to teach the pawn a lesson. Maul leaped forward, his lightsaber twirling over his head. He dropped in front of Dooku, spinning his lightsaber in a wide arc. Dooku took a step back and lunged forward, but Maul twisted to the side, deflecting the stab. His other blade spun down towards Dooku's shoulder, catching Dooku off guard. Dooku clumsily lifted his blade up to deflect the attack. The force of the blow pushed Dooku's blade inches from his head. He twisted to his right, blocking the attack from Maul's second blade that came for his feet. As he did, he shot his boot straight into Maul's chest. Maul grunted as he rolled backward. Dooku straightened. He brought his blade up and in front of his face before lowering it into a ready posture, with his blade pointed toward Maul. Maul lunged forward, knocking Dooku's blade out of the way, but Dooku anticipated the strike and quickly thrust out his hand, launching a torrent of force lightning at Maul. Maul caught the lightning on his blade and pushed it back toward Dooku. Stepping out of the way of Maul's blade, Dooku desperately slashed at Maul's lightsaber. As Maul blocked the attack, Dooku stepped back again, pulling his lightsaber away before lunging forward with a stab. Maul knocked the stab aside and followed up with his own strike. Dooku parried, but before he could counter, Maul was attacking with his other blade. Dooku caught the blade, but Maul's foot connected with Dooku's hip. Dooku knocked Maul back with a force push. Maul slid backward. Pain exploded from Dooku's hip. He would none of that show on his face, of course. He could not let Maul smell blood. He was afraid. He embraced his fear and let it fuel him, as Maul attacked again. Maul's blade spun toward Dooku. He struck with one side, then the other. He alternated his strikes, but Dooku began seeing patterns. The blades were connected. When one struck, the other had to draw back. Though Maul did attack with the same side multiple times in a row, it was uncommon. More importantly was Maul's spacing. He was constantly closing the distance, and when he was too close to strike with his blades, he would resort to his body. Dooku saw his chance. He leaned out of the way of Maul's elbow, which passed right above Dooku's face. He brought his blade up to block a saber strike on his right as he blasted Maul back with force lightning at point-blank range. Maul had no chance. The lightning knocked him backward. His lightsaber tumbled from his hand as he slammed into the hard platform and rolled. Dooku shot another blast to force lightning. Maul began to writhe and yell in pain, but he rose to his knees and summoned his lightsaber with force. He roared as the red blade ignited and absorbed the lightning. Dooku closed the door onto lightning. How had he survived that? What was this creature? Dooku realized that he had betrayed his fear. He felt a rising sense of courage and determination from Maul, and something else, anger, but far stronger than anything Dooku had felt before. Maul shot forward, igniting his second blade. Dooku sidestepped his attacks like a matador fighting a ring. Maul was no simple recruit. He was a ragdoll. His blades twirled around Dooku. It took every ounce of skill Dooku had to avoid the blades. He saw the patterns of Maul's attacks. Though Maul's range empowered him, it also made him predictable. Dooku caught him with a force punch. Maul stumbled to the side. As Dooku lunged after him, Maul flipped overhead, landing behind Dooku. Dooku spun to face him, but he was too slow. Dooku was flung backward by a shockwave of force power. He came to a stop on the edge of the platform. He quickly summoned his lightsaber and prepared for a force push, but instead Maul was leaping toward Dooku. Anger and bloodlust emanated from Maul as he ran in front of Dooku. Maul's strike came fast. He got into Dooku's guard and grabbed his throat with one hand. Maul pushed Dooku back, but Dooku managed to turn aside. Maul threw him to the ground and disarmed him of his lightsaber. The edge of the platform was just to Dooku's right. Dooku rolled to the side, avoiding an attack from Maul's lightsaber. He rolled to his knees and launched a force push, but Maul did not fall backward. Dooku's force push was matched by Maul's own. Dooku poured everything he had into the push. His breath came in gasps, and he no longer bothered to keep his expressions under control. He met Maul's yellow eyes and knew his head changed to the same color. The pressure built. If he could just win this battle, Maul would be gone forever. He would have his revenge. His revenge for Qui-Gon. The world spun around Dooku. He felt himself slam into the ground, hard. He struggled up to his knees. His leg was stiff. Something hot and wet dripped down his face. He felt his head. Blood matted his hair. He pushed himself to his feet, leaving a bloody handprint on the platform. As he took a step back, his hip gave out. He fell back to the ground, landing hard on his arm. But despite the pain, Dooku was satisfied. Maul was gone. A very close battle, but I think Dooku would win, especially with the terrain of the landing platform. Maul may be able to defeat Dooku in a purely physical duel, but Dooku's superior force abilities and his superior tactics make up for this and allow him to defeat Maul. I think Dooku would win 55% of the time. But what do you think? Who do you think would win and why? Let me know your thoughts on the video, the channel, and Star Wars. May the Force be with you.